What's going on, Armchair Army? This is the 21st episode of the Armchair Army podcast. I am so excited to have you guys along with me today as we are going to talk some Seahawks. We're going to talk NFL. We actually have a very special announcement at the end where we are going to introduce a segment that is going to be on every Friday with a very special guest that is going to be on the segment as well. So stay tuned for that. We're going to talk some college football. We have regional roundup. We're not going to want to miss that as well because we have huge teams and huge games going on through Christmas break, so stick with me for that. But thank you for joining the Armchair Army. Without further ado, let's roll. Before we get into some segments here, I just want to talk about one thing. I have one thing on my mind, and that's some Seahawks football. I don't know what's going on with the Seattle Seahawks, but something needs to change and change quick. I get that we lost Richard Sherman. I get that Cam Chancellor's out for the Seahawks, but holy smokes. What are we doing here? I mean, getting blown out at home by the St. Louis Rams and take away nothing from the St. Louis Rams. They are a hell of a football team. And Jared Goff going into CenturyLink Field and playing well, hats off to him. Todd Gurley absolutely murdering the Seahawks, hats off to you as well. But there is a bigger issue that seems like it's lying in between the lines for the Seahawks. And Bobby Wagner, Earl Thomas going at each other after the game in the post-game press conference and talking about playing through an injury and talking about playing through some of the health issues that they have. My goodness. From going to Hawaii every year as a team building, to going to the Super Bowl and being one of the tightest knit groups in the country, to look at the team now, you would think that they have never, ever been a part of a team. 42-7. That was the final score of the Seattle Seahawks game at CenturyLink Field. That was the worst loss since 2010. That's before Russell Wilson even got there. So to say that the Seattle Seahawks are in shambles is an understatement. They are in complete disarray. They're imploding, which, you know, teams would love a 500 record, but it seems like the Seattle Seahawks, they're better than that, and rightfully so. They have the talent, they have the players to be successful, so for them to lose at home like they did and have the record that they do, it's disappointing to say the least, but I'm most disappointed in the leadership for the Seahawks. It seems like they can't pull it together long enough to actually play a complete game. Our offensive line looks like a bunch of peewee football players. We bring in Dwayne Brown, and while his time with the Seahawks has been short, he's leading the league in penalties in his time with the Seahawks. It's just unacceptable football. And I get that Pete Carroll has this brand of football, and I've loved it for so long. But at some point, you have to take control of your team and take control of the locker room, and it seems like this team is not close at all. And Jimmy Graham having -2 yards in 2 games, completely unacceptable. And that's going to be my rant for the Seahawks, honestly. I feel like I've bagged on the Seahawks so much in the past couple of podcasts that I feel bad almost. But it's something needs to change with the Seahawks, and something needs to change quick, or it's going to be worse than just this year. We're going to get Richard Sherman back. It seems like we're going to get Cam Chancellor back, but man, it's looking really, really grim. And it sucks for the Seahawks. But keeping with the NFL, I want to talk some positive things about the NFL here, because there is a lot to talk about positivity in the NFL. First, if you hadn't seen it, Ryan Shazier, who hurt his back, everybody thought he was paralyzed. It looks like he's recovering nicely, and he may never play football again, but he was at the Steelers game this past Sunday. It was really cool to see him in the crowd and see him in the press box, but I was really happy to see him doing well. He was waving the terrible towel, so I was excited for the Steelers getting him back into Heinz Field and back motivating the team, but the Steelers lose to the Patriots Patriots on what is the most ridiculous calls in football. Is it a catch? Is it not a catch? I don't think I've heard a lot of people say that they're not watching football because they don't know what a catch is. That's ridiculous. Let's just stop there. But I mean, if I'm a Steeler fan, I'm rattled. And I'm not just like kind of like, oh man, we lost. I hate the Patriots. So losing like that to the Patriots, I would lose my freaking mind. So I feel bad for the Steelers. AB goes out. It looks like he has a torn calf muscle, which is way bigger than just one game for the Steelers because they're going to have a shortage of wide receivers. They have Juju, they have Martavius Bryant, but it's going to be really hard without the NFL MVP to be in Antonio Brown. But the Patriots improve their record at Heinz Field in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh goes down. It looks like the Patriots are going to wrap up that number 1 seed in the AFC. And then going forward, I saw Oakland. Oakland lost there. I have no idea what's going on with Oakland. Oakland's just struggling all year, and it doesn't look like they're going to get out of the funk that they're in. It looks like Amari Cooper just cannot get back from this injury. So weird, but it seems terrible to me. But they were actually my team to look out for at the beginning of the year, and now it looks like they cannot get out of this funk they're in, which is I don't even know how to explain. I'm at a loss for words for what's going on because they have Khalil Mack, they have all of these players that should get them to a playoff spot and get them to make a run in the playoffs, and it's failed so far. And so really disappointing, especially as Marshawn Lynch coming home. I wanted them to be successful, but that is going to be all for our NFL talk. We have some segments to go over and some regional roundup, and then we have share talk at the end, which you might hear some Seahawks on there as well. But without further ado, let's get started with some regional roundup. Let's go.
Regional Roundup.
All right, let's get started with some regional roundup here. First, we're going to talk about the Gonzaga Bulldogs. They are the only ranked team in the region, and they're sitting at number 13. They are 9-2 right now. They're coming off an 89-83 win over North Dakota in double OT. Kind of a weird one at the Kennel for the Bulldogs, but nonetheless, they got the dub in Spokane, and it looks like they're a pretty decent team. There are only 2 losses coming against number 1 in the country, Villanova, and then the other one coming against Florida in the PK80 tournament in Portland. But it looks like they're a young team, and it looks like they're going to make a little bit of a run here in the tournament. Hopefully, this young team gets better as they go, but I really like this Zags team. And after last year losing in the national championship, Mark Few's put together a good team again, which is great for Spokane, great for the community, and so I'm really happy there. IUPUI is coming up for the Zags, and then they have San Diego State on Wednesday. Washington State and the Cougs are 7-3. They won against IUPUI, I believe. My goodness. They 72-59 win over them, and then they play Kansas State in Spokane Arena, 12-20 here, so they will play on Wednesday as well, which will be a really cool matchup in Spokane for all the Spokane-ites that want to go there. Game outside of Pullman. It's always fun to get the not only the Zags in Spokane, but it's fun to get the Cougs in Spokane as well and get their games going as well. But staying in Washington, UW 8-3, 80-78 win over LMU. They're struggling a little. They're 8-3, but the losses that they've had, they've gotten absolutely torched. I mean, they lost by 30 to Gonzaga. They beat. I really don't understand Washington because they beat Kansas who's ranked in the top 25, and then they get throttled by Gonzaga at home. So I can't really put my finger on what's going on for the Huskies, but first-year head coach there, they're actually looking like they have some young talent that could be there for a while, not just one and dones. So that's going to be really awesome for the Huskies. But moving over to Idaho, Idaho won 82-52 over Western Michigan. They have UC Irvine next, and that makes them 8-3 overall. All the regional teams actually are doing really well. I know it's the beginning of the season, so we have a lot to go, especially with conference play coming up. It should be really fun to watch all the regional teams compete in their conferences, with Idaho being in the Sun Belt, Washington State in the Pac-12, and then Gonzaga, of course, in the Western Conference here. So it's actually really interesting to see all these teams from different conferences in the region play against each other, just because they all are in different conferences. So kind of fun, especially with Boise State. Boise State's in the Mountain West, Idaho's in the Sun Belt, Washington and Washington State are in Pac-12, and then you have the Zags in the West Coast Conference. So I feel like there's so many conferences accounted for here on the West Coast that it's really fun to just keep track of. But moving to Boise State, 25-point loss to SMU. That brings them to 10-2. 10-1 was the best start in program history. I was really, really high on the Broncos. I thought that if they beat SMU, they'd be ranked for sure, but they just lay an absolute egg to SMU, and it doesn't look like they're going to get ranked anytime soon, especially with that loss to SMU. But they have Colorado State Wednesday. They're going to start their conference play. That should be a lot of fun, but that is going to do it for our regional roundup. We will be back next week with the regional roundup as well, updating you on all the scores from across the region. So we are going to actually move on to our next segment that is Chair Talk, so stay tuned.
Chair Talk.
All right, we are going to start some chair talk, and as if I haven't bashed the Seahawks enough, I feel like one person in particular needs to be put in the chair this week, and he is a Seahawk. So I am putting Michael Bennett in the chair. Michael Bennett is going to be in the chair not only because he should be suspended at the moment for his actions against the Jags, but just his play overall. He looks like he just doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to rush the quarterback. It doesn't look like he's a leader on the sidelines. And as if the Seahawks weren't a mess, he is making it 10 times worse for the Seahawks to compete against good teams, which is really disheartening because we have a good team. With Bobby Wagner, Earl Thomas, and Michael Bennett, if you told me that those players were playing on the Seahawks, even without Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor, we would have a very decent shot, not only at the West and the Western Conference, or I apologize, the Western Division, the NFC West, but just overall. And I really, really hate to see Michael Bennett play how he's been playing. And after being one of the advocates for Black Lives Matter and being one of the people that lied in Las Vegas, he's quickly becoming one of the biggest villains in the NFL, just because he can't back up his stances with much of anything, not his play, not his actions. So it's actually really sad to see what Michael Bennett has become, just because he was one of my favorite players going in with his just I mean, he's an awesome football player, don't get me wrong. But the way he's played the past couple of weeks has been really disheartening. So hopefully he can turn it around. But again, quickly becoming one of my least favorite players and the most hated player across the league, really. So Michael Bennett, I hope you turn it around, not only for the Seahawks, but just for your personal image as well. You are in the chair this week. You have to figure it out. Plus, you're our only hope to get the Seahawks in the playoffs. So, Michael Bennett, you're in the chair this week for not performing, not being a good person off the field. So, Michael Bennett, again, you are in the chair. That actually is going to do it for me here at the Armchair Army podcast. I have a special announcement still to make on Friday. we are going to have our very first Schmick Showdown with Noah Schmick. He is going to have his very own segment on the Armchair Army, so stay tuned for that. Every Friday, we are going to have the Schmick Showdown where we talk about really whatever Noah wants to talk about. And if you've ever heard Noah on the podcast, he's awesome to talk about football, NBA, really anything. So I'm excited to have his segment on our Armchair Army podcast. We also have a Mariner minor leaguer coming on in a couple of weeks. So 2 announcements today. The Schmick Showdown coming every Friday, and then the Mariner minor leaguer coming on. I will announce the name next week, just so you have something to look forward to on Tuesday. But I'm really excited for the Mariner minor leaguer to come on the podcast, and also Noah Schmick and the Schmick Showdown to be on the Armchair Army podcast. That is going to do it for me, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. You guys have a great rest of your week, and I can't wait to talk to you on Friday.